I wouldn't listen to something about, say, the Yorkshire Ripper because it's saturated. There's loads of stuff out there. Yeah. But I'd choose something from, say, 1973 that's really obscure that you haven't heard of, and I'd think, oh yeah, that's quite interesting, because that's what I'd want to listen to myself.
My name is Nik Nagarkar, and you are locked into Culture TV. For the culture, by the culture. Let's go. Hello, Paul. Thank you very much for coming on the show, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Nick. Thanks very much for having me on.
So, True Crime Enthusiasts. How long have you had the podcast?
It's been going on nearly 4 years now. It started as a blog about 5 years ago, and it's just skyrocketed from there. It really has.
And where did the passion come from for this?
It's since I was a kid, really. You know, it's all like old Crime Watch, old scary stuff. Like folks like stay up too late watching all.
Do you remember Crime Watch back in the day?
More than anything, mate, I tell you. They're all on YouTube now, actually.
Are they?
Shared them all from BBC, yeah. So proper good Crime Watch when it was scary and memorable, you know.
And they had the music to go with it as well, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The police driving up the motorway and all that, yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Wow, so it's been 4 years.
4 years.
Wow, brilliant. And during this journey, what have you learned, and how has it sort of changed your perception about serious crime out there?
It's basically just how much of it there is. And I've come to notice as well that certain crimes are stay in the public conscious more than others. Yeah. And I don't quite understand why that is, really.
Which crimes, for example, would you mean?
I'd say, for example, you know, you've got your things off the top of your head like Madeleine McCann, James Bulger, stuff like that. But there are other they're not the only children to go missing or murdered, are they? There's so many others who you don't know, who are forgotten about.
Is it because of, I suppose it's the media attention to those cases that's raised the profile of them, I suppose. What is your thoughts on the Madeleine McCann case?
It's not something I ever want to touch on. That it's not something I want to get drawn into at all.
Oh really? Why?
I have my own personal opinions about it. Again, that could be because of the media and the way certain people are portrayed in the media. Should we say that? More.
Right. Okay. So I think you mean the mum there, basically.
I do mean the mum and dad. Yeah, no messing about. Shameful. Absolutely shameful that they still had their other two children, I think.
Yeah, I do. It's the whole reaction to that case, I think, it's been so big because, first of all, you don't leave your kid in a foreign country while you go to a restaurant. Like you just don't. There's just basic things that you don't do. And the fact that one kid went missing and the other stayed, and
strange, isn't it? Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, I don't know. That one particularly disturbed me. I recently watched. Have you seen that film on All Four, Longford?
No, I've not. Is it about the Lord Longford?
It's about Lord Longford, yeah, and his relationship with Myra Hindley. I found that really fascinating. Because I think as a kid, obviously I'm from Manchester. My parents grew up around the time of, my mum grew up in Manchester around the time of when all that was going on in the 60s. So she's pretty well versed in that case. So she, when I was a kid, my mum would make me aware about, there was this woman back in the day and she was doing it. So it's kind of like something that I was aware of from an early age. So watching that film about Lord Longford, I always found it quite fascinating how someone could sympathise or empathise with Myra Hindley.
Yeah, he proper did, didn't he? Yeah, he really did. But then that's another great example of what we were going back before, about how some things stay in the public conscious. Yeah. Like Hindley and Brady. That photograph of Myra Hindley is iconic, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like the embodiment of evil, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is, yeah.
And what I found quite strange about that film is that we all know Brady is like an evil lunatic, but he was just an evil lunatic. He was quite one-dimensional in that sense. How the film portrays him, like whereas Myra Hindley, there's quite a lot of layers to her evil, where she will wear a mask, she will pretend to be a certain way, pretend to be a changed woman, pretend to be like she was pretending to Longford that she'd converted to Catholicism and that she was this, you know, not sinless, but she'd ask for forgiveness for her sins and that she's trying to be a changed woman. But at the end, when I don't know how much you know about this, but so basically Jack Straw was about to sign off on her release in like 2006, and Ian Brady wasn't having none of that. So we called the Sun, like the newspaper. He got a journalist to go up to Durham to his jail, and he basically told them everything that she'd done, confessed to 3 more murders. Obviously the next day it was all over the press. Hindley's committed 3 more murders that she never confessed to, and that was the end of her parole. So she could never. So it's a really interesting film. Actually, you should watch it.
I will do. Yeah, I will do. I mean, she must have died not long after that, surely.
Yeah, well, I think she sort of gave up. So what? And I mean, I don't know how accurate the film is as far as like historical accuracy, but so she calls Longford up to her, whatever, she invites him to her prison, and she basically says, that's it, I'm done with you. This is after a 20-year relationship, but she just cuts him off cold. And the strange thing is, Longford had avoided listening to those tapes. You know, the Leslie Ann Downey tapes?
Yeah.
He'd never listened to them up till this point.
I mean, and then he listened to them.
And then he listens to them and realises what he was dealing with.
What pure... As if you wouldn't, though. As if you wouldn't do that.
Mate, I stumbled across them tapes on YouTube once, and it disturbed me for weeks.
I can imagine that's just something you don't want to hear.
Have you heard them?
I've not heard. I've read the transcript of them.
Yeah. Don't ever listen to them.
Horrendous.
Yeah, it's. I mean, just
thinking about it, man, it puts the shivers,
doesn't it? Yeah, that's the embodiment of evil. That
it really does. Yeah.
So,
what's your plans with True Crime Enthusiast?
Well, I'm in the process of writing a book at the moment. The first book from the show. So basically, it's going to be. It's a bit half and half. It's half cases that I've already covered in the 6 series to date that I've done. Yeah. But the other half will be sort of new cases that I've found, and I think the byline says there's cases I've already opened, cases I'm yet to open, cases I've still to open. Case files, you know. So
wow.
Yeah, so there's a bit of that. So it's like trying to write episodes of the series around writing the series, if you like. So it's I need a 30-hour day at the moment. I really do. It's absolutely crazy.
Wow.
Crazy busy.
What is your process for researching a case? Like, how do you go about that?
I try and work about a month in advance, really. So I'll have a big list of, I'm doing that next month. I've got a massive library here at home. Really have. Quite good at searching online. I've become over the past 4 years, you know, thinking archives, this, that, and the other. Yeah. Sometimes I get to go to the scenes, depending on where it is. I mean, I'm from North Wales, so I'm not going to trip to the top of Orkney to go and look to see if a shop's still the same as it was 20 years ago. Really not that bothered. But if I can go to the place, I will. I'll bask it in because I like bits of colour like that, you know.
Yeah.
I've said to someone before, I've said, describe everything. Nothing is trivial, you know. Say if that was a garage 20 years ago, go there and say, well, it's not a garage anymore. Such and such is here now.
Right.
It brings it just home for people, you know.
Yeah.
A bit more in their mind's eye.
Yeah.
So I do that, and then I have this crazy disjointed way of, I'll have about 20 documents, and there'll be a bit of it on that, and there'll be a bit of it on that, and then there'll be notes, and then I'll condense them down and swap them over and all this, and it just works. It's like the kind of mess. You know, like Bowie used to write songs by putting pieces of paper on the floor in a circle.
Right.
Okay, something like that. It's a disjointed mess, but it just seems to come together by picking bits, like doing a big jigsaw.
Yeah. And so it takes you about a month to put each episode together.
No. I turn
you
around
start
in a week.
Right, okay. But you start about a month in advance.
Yeah. For working months. So like, I'm doing what I'm doing now. I've been doing for the past 7 weeks. I'm doing a massive multi-part episode at the moment.
Right.
I've been doing that for the past 7 weeks, but I spent the previous month putting all the research together. Yeah. So I know what I'm doing next month. So I've already got stuff earmarked and bookmarked, and books are out and put to one side.
Yeah.
So I know. So I'm quite sort of, I fell into a quite a good rut that I'm practiced at using now. Yeah.
Right.
So why did you choose podcasting as the medium for this?
Well, I started before I started my show in 2017. I started writing for another UK show, and it was just about the time that podcasts were, I mean, they were already out, but they were proper just kicking off, you know.
Yeah,
and
just getting
Yeah. So I come across this guy. Am I allowed to mention his show, am I? Or
Yeah, I can mention what
it's a great show. It's a UK true crime podcast. Absolutely fabulous.
I'll have to check that out, yeah.
It's really good. Weekly show, dead down to earth, proper good. And he was choosing things that I'd be interested in hearing myself.
Right.
Because that's what I've always tried to do since I started it. I wouldn't listen to something about, say, the Yorkshire Ripper because it's saturated. There's loads of stuff out there. Yeah. But I'd choose something from, say, 1973 that's really obscure that you haven't heard of, and I'd think, oh yeah, that's quite interesting. Because that's what I'd want to listen to myself.
And how would you even find the information on something like that? Because it wouldn't be online.
You start with a name. You start with a name, and then you trawl back through archives, or chances are you'll find it in some sort of regional book that you've got, or there's always ways. And I find out as much as I can. Excuse me. I always find out as much as I can, and if there's like the best part of bugger all, you just get a paragraph.
Yeah.
Then I'll put 3 or 4 similar cases together to make up an episode, you know, to get a bit of meat. So, yeah, so I always do that because I don't like to think that anybody is forgotten. Nobody is more important than someone else's story.
Yeah.
I don't believe that at all. So that's what I was trying to do.
Do you think with like the investigations that you've been doing on these like cases, do you think you've ever found something that might have been missed at the time?
I think I was asked this quite recently, and I believe that these people, it's so popular now. There are so many of them, and people who are really serious about it, like myself, there's a lot of other hosts who are as well. I think we've got the time and the patience to look through one of these things, and I think that's a very valuable resource that the police could tap into.
Yeah.
And it's not just myself who said this. This is like, I've heard some high-profile sort of public figures say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's daft. It's a tool. Why would you not use it if it's a useful tool? That
Well, it's free support, isn't it? Essentially for the police.
Completely, it is. Completely. It's like having someone come round to do your garden.
Yeah. It's like saying, let me cut your grass.
That's right, yeah. Well, I love cutting grass. I'm dead interested in it. Can I do it? Well, yeah, you can do it because it's done then, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't understand. I know there might be the problem with that is, though, you'd get some people who are just, ghouls and would want gory details just for themselves. But then you get some serious people who would look at it and think, it's a different pair of eyes looking at something, you know, and you might see something that other people have seen differently. Yeah. They haven't seen that's in plain sight.
Yeah.
I do believe that. But I don't know if I specifically have myself.
Yeah.
I've offered a few theories about some unsolved cases that I've covered.
Yeah.
Because I always chuck my own thoughts in all the time. And it has to be an educated guess because you just don't know. You're working with limited information. Yeah. But you know, I don't say stupid things like, well, aliens have done it, obviously. You know what I mean? It's always kind of like that. But I test my own arguments as well. I'll argue for it, I'll argue against it.
Yeah.
And then it's up to people to what they think, isn't it?
So, Paul, in 4 years of doing this show, what would you say is the strangest case that you've covered?
The most unique, it was actually an episode. I would say, yes, there is an episode that was written for the show by a listener. So I always like to, at least once a series, I put it out there that if anybody's listening has got a case they're interested in, or it's always proper burning to them, it might be personal, it might be something they're connected with, someone who lives up the road. I was like, if you want to research it and write it up for the show, by all means, please do, and I'll put it out as an episode.
Yeah.
Had an episode written about 2 series ago, I think, and the title of it is The Feathers and the Golden Flute, and it's one of my absolute favorite episodes.
The Feathers and the Golden Flute.
The Feathers and the Golden Flute, and what it is basically is, in a nutshell, it's a musician. He's a bit strange. I would have said he was on the spectrum myself, and he like a bit of a music prodigy, come over to the UK, he's American. He had an interest in fly fishing, right?
Right.
Bear with me, fly fishing. He wanted to, he got so obsessive and so practiced in the world of fly fishing that he wanted to do it with proper exotic feathers, right? But you can only use certain, because they're very expensive and some of them are protected.
Yeah.
So what he decided to do was break into the Natural History Museum, and he stole about £200,000 worth of exotic bird feathers to make flies with. Right. What he wanted to do was sell as many as he could, because he wanted to buy a golden flute. And he obviously didn't get his golden flute, but he didn't spend any time in jail, and they didn't get all of the feathers back either. They lost about 100 grand's worth or something like that off the top of my head. Wow. It's an absolute, the story was, I read it and I was just absolutely fascinating.
And when was this?
This is not that long ago, actually. I would say 10 years ago.
Have you tried to find the guy?
I have looked him up. He now puts videos out on YouTube. He does heavy metal flute videos.
No way.
He does, seriously. Yeah, I can't for the life of me remember his name now, but it's Edwin something.
Have you thought about getting him on the show?
Have you what, sorry?
Have you thought about getting him on the show?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. If I ever start the kind of interview, in the conversational podcast, mine is very much a single narrator, but if I ever start the conversation one, he'd be someone I would desperately want on. But then I think I might come across as though I'm taking the mick out of him. Yeah. Really, because I'm tell me about your feathers, you know. Just nuts.
Yeah.
What do you think the explosion of podcasting over the past few years has enabled so many different types of content to break through and to provide a lot more sort of variety of content for people these days? For example, the True Crime podcast. What do you think how do you think this is going to change and develop over time, do you think?
I think a lot more people will move to YouTube.
Yeah.
It's a natural step to do. But then I think you've got to be quite comfortable in front of a camera.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you are going out to potentially millions of people, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think what you just said before about the explosion of podcasts is, especially with true crime, I found myself, there is not a great deal of diversity out there. There's not. You'll find for say 100 shows, 95 of them will cover the same 50 crimes, I would say. There will be they don't like to look for it's as though that's the only ever amount of crimes that's happened.
Yeah.
They won't look further into it. They'll just cover something that 100 other shows have done. Yeah. So you're not learning anything different, you know. I mean, why would someone then listen to that when they think, well, I've heard that?
Well, it's the same 50 crimes on 50 other shows, and
that's right. Why would you do that? So I think it's quite difficult to be diverse unless you're digging into stuff like myself that I do, or some of the other show hosts do.
Yeah.
They'll proper come up with things. And well, I speak as a listener.
Yeah.
As I said to you before, I'd listen to something, I'll read a synopsis or something, and I'll think, well, I'm interested in that. That sounds, I've not heard of that, don't know about it. I'll tune in. Then I'll see one about the Moors murders, and I'll think, well, no, I probably know quite a bit about that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to.
How long did it take you for the show to really get going?
It's a constant uphill kind of learning curve for it. It really is. I think, going back to what I just said about all these shows that pop up each day, I think a lot of people expect instant success overnight, and it doesn't happen. You've got to interact, engage with people. You've got to get people to sort of want to tune in. You've got to have a bit of personality. You've got to have a bit of good content. And they think the most important thing is, well, we'll set up a Patreon straight away. And, I've got a catchy graphic, a quirky title, content, I'll just read it off Wikipedia. And it's no good, because no one gives a monkeys about all of that if it's awful to listen to.
Yeah. You've got to provide people with some. I think, like with us, like what was really key for us with setting up Culture was that we wanted a show that added value to the listener in some way, shape, or form. So each episode, someone would take something away from it, or they'd have an insight into something that perhaps they might not have had, 10 minutes before the show. And I think that's kind of our sort of staple ingredient, is just speaking to people who are doing something a bit different, or have a particular niche. For example, you've got a niche with sort of an enthusiasm for crime. Do you know what I mean? So I think that was kind of our angle. But there are a lot of shows out there that I think they do think it's a quick fix into the success land of podcasting.
They do. They really do. Yeah.
And it's just definitely not.
you yourself know. I bet you how hard you guys work on the show. I suppose it's full time for you. It's very much like a second job for me. I work full time. And I know how hard I work on it. Excuse me. So it's not something you can take for granted, and it doesn't just happen overnight. You've got to put the time in, but then the rewards are good. You worked for it.
And is this how the book came about? From obviously the success of the show and whatnot, it was like, okay, it's time to put this down into something.
I sort of, it was always a thought in the future that I'd kind of like, well, I'd love to be a published author. I'd love to have that. And now the show's pretty successful. It gets decent listens each week, each episode, and so I know there's someone out there who would actually read something that I wrote. As I say, it's just like writing an episode. I might put a few less personal anecdotes, or I do tend to go off on tangents sometimes in the show, and so I might put a bit less of that in. But if I think to myself, if I'm writing a chapter as though I'm writing an episode, you'll be fine, because I'm quite polished at it now, and say I've done more than 200 of them. So
is it 200 episodes you've done now?
I've done more than 200 episodes.
Wow.
Wow.
And when would the book be out?
It's hopefully out for pre-order next month.
Oh wow.
It's not quite finished yet. It's about 3/4 done, but it's not quite finished, but it will be out for pre-order very soon.
Oh, amazing. Well, we'll make sure to do an article on that on the website for Culture.
Fabulous.
Once it does come
Fabulous,
out.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Oh, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show today, mate. That's really great. Thank you, mate.
You're welcome, Nick. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, good luck with the book, and we'll be definitely supporting it. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, mate. All the best, man. Take care.
See you now. Bye-bye.